So here's my dilemma. See if you can help me out. When Jesus presented the gospel, he tailor-made it to people. And Paul did the same thing, actually. In 1 Corinthians chapter 9, he identifies 4 groups of people. And he says, I become all things to all people that I might win some. So my dilemma is, how do I present the gospel to you in such a way that you find it palatable? In fact, when you go to Starbucks, they'll ask you, how do you like your coffee? And I'm sure you have your favorite. Now, some of you might not even like coffee, but they have smoothies there or juice drinks. So here are 4 different approaches that I want to develop that will share the gospel. And my dilemma is, I want you to help me figure out what is the best way for you. How do you want to hear the gospel? I recommend that you spend time listening carefully to the gospel. So here are the 4 approaches. Paul says, well, I've become all things to all people that I might by all means win some. He tailor-makes the gospel. And he says, well, there are the Jews. Well, I become like a Jew for them. For those under the law as those under the law, though not being under the law myself. Then there are those without the law, and then there are those what he calls the weak. So here are my 4 categories. See if you fit into one of these. The first is the religious person. If you're super religious, that's okay, but you still need to think through the gospel. And secondly, we have what I call the good guy or the good girl. And most Americans who would call themselves Christians would say, oh, this is who I am. I'm a good person. In fact, that's how I'm going to get to heaven, by being a good person. Well, I want to present the gospel to you. And then there's what I'm going to call the Guzzler. And the Guzzler is someone who doesn't really have a lot of religious background, and they are going for all the gusto they can get. Well, you need to hear the gospel. You need to hear the good news. And I'm talking about the full gospel, not some kind of a cut off, truncated, let me make it real simple for you gospel. And then there's the last would be the weak, the wounded, the victim, or the addict. And you might fit that category. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present the gospel in 4 different ways. And I'm asking people to help me do this. But I want you to hear the gospel. And I want you to hear it in a way that's not offensive. So if I'm coming at you as a religious guy, and you think I hate religion, and many people do, well then fine. Don't hear the gospel that way, but I'll present it to you. Maybe you're a guzzler. Maybe you're weak. Or maybe you're a moralist. You're saying, oh, well, I'm a good person. I don't really need to clarify the gospel, but you do. So that's my invitation. And then as I continue to share these little clips, I'm going to create 4 different blogs. And I'm going to invite you to go look at my blog according to who you think you are, according to the way that you'd like to hear the gospel. The religious, Jesus dealt with the religious. He dealt with Nicodemus. The good guy or the good girl, well, there is the rich ruler. We'll call him Richie. So the first guy was Nick. Then we'll talk to Richie. Then we'll talk to Zach. Well, Zach was Zacchaeus, and he was a tax collector, but he broke all the rules because he was living for himself. He's a guzzler. And then we're going to talk about the woman at the well in John 4. Well, she's cutie. Okay? People thought she was so cute. In fact, she was married 5 times, living with a guy. She was actually sexually exploited. So she's a good one. She's wounded. But Jesus reached out to her, and he reaches out to you too. So the question is, as we tailor-make the gospel presentation, which one are you? Are you religious? Are you a good guy or a good girl? Are you a guzzler or are you wounded? Irregardless of who you are, you need to hear the whole gospel. And you need to hear it in a way that it will touch and bless your hearts, because it is good news. So, how do you like it? We'll serve it up, but make sure that you take time to digest it well.